We are back. I'm Mia O'Brien, and on today's edition of the Jaguar Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, Travis Hunter. Will he play corner? Will he play wide receiver? Or both? That is the question that is still somehow being debated nearly 365 days after he was drafted number 2 overall by the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I bet the everydayers weren't curious about this because we talked about it last year. But this is what happens, no disrespect to anyone, when you pay more attention to national than local. We kind of know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this and talk about where I think he belongs and how he's going to help the Jaguars win it all next year.
Duval! It's the Jaguars Squad. Everything Jacksonville Jaguars every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Gear up! The Jaguars Squad Show starts now.
What is going on, party people? Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on the Locked On Jaguars channel. Mia O'Brien, Tony T. Wigg Wiggins, and former Jaguar Marques Ogden with you for the next hour to cover a variety of topics as it pertains to your big cats. First and foremost, want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. T. Wigg, you noted it. If you've been an everydayer here on the Locked On Jaguars YouTube channel, you've heard a time or two about this discourse surrounding where number 12, Travis Hunter, should be playing on the football field, given that he did play both corner and wide receiver at Colorado and was expected when the Jaguars drafted him to play both. I believe he is still going to play both, but maybe he will major a bit more at corner in 2026. T-Wig, let's begin with you before we get Marcus's take on the topic that has been swirling on the internet since we just took a week vacation from the squad show here, which thanks everybody for hanging out with us and sticking with us. We appreciate you guys giving us a little bit of a break. T-Wig was out in Vegas and Marcus was in the ATL on an assignment. I was out in the West Coast as well, so we appreciate you guys hanging with us. During that time, though, T-Wig still kept you guys locked in here on Locked On Jaguars, and you did an episode on this very topic. So let's first hear from you, Tony Wiggins, your thoughts on why this Cam Wolfe of the NFL Network report got the internet buzzing over the last 7 days.
Well, shout out to Cam. Cam does a good job. He comes to Jacksonville quite often. He's one of the best in the business. So this is not an indictment of him. He did what he was supposed to do. What it is, though, is everybody in Jacksonville felt compelled to respond, and most of the responses, even from the media, was like, okay, you're telling us something we don't already know. Travis Hunter was drafted. The people that think the Jaguars were crazy to trade up for him, you'll never change their mind, ever. Don't try, okay? Unless he would have been the MVP on offense and defense and they won the Super Bowl and he's the Super Bowl MVP, those folks going to tell you it wasn't worth it. They hold draft picks like that, like it's something they just cannot get rid of, right? I said last year before Travis got picked that there are two players that over the next 2 years, non-quarterbacks, and this was last year in 2025, I said there's two players, and there's only one of them I would choose over Travis Hunter the next 2 years, non-quarterbacks. It's Travis and Jeremiah Smith. That's it. If Jeremiah Smith would have been eligible last year, he would have been the first player in the draft, and everybody knows it. A team like Jacksonville, with where they were, needed an influx of talent, an influx of special. And I don't mean for headlines. I mean for on the field. And anyone who saw Travis play this year in games against the Chiefs and the Rams, he was the best non-quarterback on the field. And everybody knows it. So for all of those that are peacocking and celebrating the fact that they were right because he got hurt, what happened after they got hurt? The team, after he got hurt, we went 13-4. Prior to him getting hurt, there were people who were Colorado Buffs fans saying, you need to call Coach Prime because Liam doesn't know what he's doing. It was a new staff, new situation, a new undertaking. And when it all first happened, they said that they were trying to figure out. In fact, I played a clip from our roundtable when Ron Miles, I asked him, I've been told reps matter so much. How can you tell me reps don't matter? And Ron Miles said something to the effect, well, he has mental reps. Ron Miles is no longer here, by the way, but I digress with that.
We may get into that because we do have a make the case coming up with regards to that cornerback position. Continue, T-Wig.
Right. So the thing that got me was I said a year ago, almost a year ago, he can roll out of bed and play cornerback and be a Pro Bowler as long as he does the work, which we know he does. I said, to be a really, really good wide receiver, you got to get timing. You got to get a whole bunch of things down. You got to get cadence. You got to know where you're going. There's not just one wide receiver position. There's 3. It's a lot. If you don't do that full time, it's a lot. It's not just guarding somebody. So Liam Cohen had a sit down with somebody, and he said, oh, we know he can play corner. We felt like he needed more work at wide receiver in order to get up to par. If you're going to play him both ways, the thing that he needs to work on is the thing that he doesn't do the most. And that was wide receiver early in the year. Then with Parker's emergence, and then with them going to get Jacoby, and that wasn't because of Travis, that was because of Brian.
Yep.
Now they get all of this production. And then at the meeting when the GM and the coach met with us, Mia, what did you hear Gladstone say? Well, he basically told you the writing's on the wall. We got 2 corners that's up for contract extensions. They're free agents. He pretty much told you what the plan is. So I just don't understand how folks made such a big deal about it. Well, I actually do. They don't pay attention to people that are local. And when they don't, this is what happens. Things take on a life of its own, and it should have never been this big a deal.
It is also February 18th as we are live with you on the Locked On Jaguars YouTube channel. People be bored, Marcus, as I like to say, with the NFL Combine just days away. And so we needed a little bit of Jaguars news. We needed a little bit of NFL news. And so this talking point on Travis Hunter resurfaces. You give us your take in terms of the number 2 overall pick if he predominantly plays corner in 2026 and beyond. Does that not make him worth the number 2 overall pick?
Again, finding a lockdown corner in the NFL is very rare. You've had guys like Deion Sanders, guys like Darrell Green, there have been like Rod Woodson, who've been like true lockdown corners. Drafting a guy at the number 2 pick who is a lockdown corner who has the skill set to do so is never a bad pick, because that's a guy that can really take away and make the offense have to really adjust and take away half the field. And that's something that's very rare in the National Football League, because there's so much talent in the National Football League. So again, the Jaguars really picked him, in my opinion, to be a corner. But we said we know he can play both ways. But like you said, if somebody does something well, it's like, I call that self-awareness. I do a lot of speaking. I did a talk yesterday in Greensboro at a college. I said the S for my acronym BISON, self-awareness. Know what you do well, know what you don't do well. What you don't do well, work on it more. So if he doesn't do a lot of wide receiver, if he doesn't do a lot of route running, a lot of timing, a lot of, audible, shifting, going in motion, you have to work on that. At corner, you're out there on the island, you're in your stance, and a guy goes, you backpedal, you cut, you turn your hips, you find the football, you try to deflect it, you try to intercept it. It's a lot of technique involved in both, but there's a lot more total knowledge that goes into being a wide receiver. As T-Wigg said, you have to play with other guys. Other guys are running routes in certain areas, and you don't want to go into that area. Guys are going to be doing misdirection and all. I mean, there's so many things that go into being a very good wide receiver or a great wide receiver. So again, if I'm the Jaguars, I love the pick. Again, moving up and get rid of draft picks to draft a guy at number 2, that's not a bad thing. If you know the guy has potential, I always tell people 3 positions I feel are truly worth trading up for in the NFL to draft high: a left tackle, a corner, a quarterback. Those are the 3. Left tackle, corner, quarterback. So it may be a rush defensive end, right? Maybe, but that's maybe. Because again, you can find those later. Find a true left tackle, a true lockdown corner, or a phenomenal quarterback. They don't grow on trees in college. So again, he got hurt. That happens. It was a freak accident at practice. That's the way things happen. That's just football. But again, I like the pick, and I think the Jaguars did a really good job. And again, what's the use of holding picks, right? What's the use of having a pick if you're not going to go out and get a phenomenal player? Like, what's the use of having picks like, later in the draft or later on, I can maybe get a good player here, maybe get a good player there. You're a lot less likely to find a great player in the later rounds than in the early rounds. Doesn't mean you won't, but it's a lot less likely. So I think the Jaguars did what they thought was necessary. And let's be honest, the Jaguars also needed some things like from a marketing perspective to get people excited about coming back to the games, and they did just that.
Let's also address this, Marcus. They hedged their bet. While many people around the league did not think the Jaguars would compete in year one of Liam Cohen, James Gladstone, and Tony Baselli, they did. They won 13 games. Additionally, what they viewed as potentially going to be a pick in the later round of the first round of the 2026 NFL draft that they dealt away to the Cleveland Browns, many thought would be a top 5, top 10 pick. It is not. It is currently slated to go, I believe it's 24th overall, T-Wig, correct me if I'm wrong, to the Cleveland Browns. And to that end, this is a draft class in 2026, which we're also going to get to later in today's program. This is a draft class that many believe once you get past pick 10, there is not a difference between prospect 11 and prospect, wait for it, 56, where the Jaguars will have their first selection in the 2026 NFL draft. And so to that end, they felt like, all right, well, beauty's going to be in the eyes of the beholder anyways. And it's not like, to your point, Marcus, there are elite blue chippers to be had at pick 24 in this upcoming draft. So why not get one of the most surefire prospects we've seen in the last 25 years with number 2 overall in 2025? And so that's where I salute them. Again, we are going to make the case for Buster Brown. We've been doing that the last few weeks here on the Locked On Jaguar Squad Show. For those of you hanging out with us for the first time, thank you for hanging out with us. But T-Wig brought up the comment from James Gladstone. I was listening to your comments, Marcus. I was just making sure we pulled this up so I can read the verbatim quote from the Jaguars GM back on January the 14th at the end of season press conference. Gladstone, when asked about how Hunter's rehab from that knee injury is going, he said, in part, quote, "Obviously, you can take a peek at expiring contracts on our roster and which side of the ball has more. Obviously, at this point, walking into the offseason, corner is a position that we have a few guys who are on expiring contracts. By default, you can expect there to be a higher emphasis on Hunter's placement." And so, Marcus, I kick it back to you briefly before T-Wig, you give us your final thoughts on the topic. Marcus, if you're James Gladstone, Liam Cohen, Tony Baselli, you recognize, given the current state of the roster, knowing, yes, you have plenty of selections coming in April's draft, but at the same time, you have Travis Hunter on your roster. You expect him to be healthy in some form or fashion for the offseason program. How are you dialing up his workflow? Not just here in the offseason, but going into OTAs, going into training camp. Are you exclusively having him now practice at corner? How are you sprinkling it in? Is it the opposite of last year where he would have 2 days at wide receiver and the third would be at corner?
Yeah, I would go opposite because right now, as you said, the Jaguars are having a lot of players, a couple of players who are going to be coming up on their contracts ending. And like anything else, it's all about reps, reps, reps. I don't like the phrase mental reps. I know what they're trying to say, but you have to be on the field actually I could take a bunch of mental reps now at 45. I'm not going to go out there and try to play left tackle or right tackle. I got to take all the reps that I want. You got to get those physical reps. So I feel you switch it this year. You put 2 to defense, 1 to offense if you're going to go that route. And this is where he is going to make his money. Again, you could do a couple of packages, kind of like what Deion did back in the day. Deion was sprinkling here and there on offense, stuff like that. But Deion was primarily defense. That's what he was. And that's what he's in the Hall of Fame for. That's what he coached Travis Hunter for. And again, I see a lot of similarities in how they play the game. And it doesn't surprise me why. So I feel you have to put a lot of his work in OTAs and leading up to training camp into the regular season at corner.
So now to that point, final word from you, T-Wig, on this subject. One thing that I have reservations about, and I'm sure you do as well, if Travis Hunter is being sprinkled in certain packages on offense because he is predominantly a corner outside for the Jacksonville Jaguars, how do you ensure that this does not become a Jamal Agnew 2023 Jaguars season situation in which every time the former return man was on the field on offense, you knew he was going to get the football? How do you avoid that if you are Liam Cohen and the offensive staff?
Well, we avoid it by recognizing that Liam Cohen is not Doug Peterson and Press Taylor. So the first thing that we know, when you ask them about wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, they'll tell you we don't do that like that. We got letters. We're gonna throw to what you see. You put enough weapons out there, and then the pre-snap reads tell you where to go with the football, and you don't mind where they go with the ball because everybody that touches it can make it happen. That's what they do here. It's almost like what Nick Saban did when he had 4 or 5 first-round picks at wide receiver. It's almost like, remember when Jameson Williams was the 4th receiver at Ohio State and he had to transfer to Alabama and he won the Biletnikoff Award? And people say Ohio State's crazy. Oh, by the way, Egbuka and JSN were up there just waiting too. Sometimes you just got to throw the ball who's open. And if your offense is built that way, that's the way it goes. And to back up something that Marcus says, I always do this. Y'all forgive me. I had to look up the word prospect one day because I think when people say prospect, they think player. Prospect is the possibility or likelihood that some future event is going to happen. The future event we're talking about is someone turning into a great player when everybody's very, very good. You can't always say that a guy that's great in college is going to be great in the pros. You see a lot of dudes win the Heisman and they don't get a sniff in the NFL. It's 2 different things. So it's about projecting. You look at his athleticism and you look at his instincts. Those things do not come naturally to a lot of people. He's special, Champ Bailey type, Deion type special. That's what the Jaguars drafted. They drafted an influx of special on a team that didn't have a whole bunch of special and traditionally hasn't had that. You can name probably 6 or 7 guys in this organization that have been truly, truly special. You look at the Chiefs, they got 3 dudes that weren't even chosen in the first round that are first ballot Hall of Famers at some point. Tyreek, Jones, and Kelsey. You see how that difference is and why they have Lombardi trophies and we don't? Because they have special. So therefore, and of course they got Mahomes, but you see my point, he was a first-round pick at least. The thing is, when you can get a special player, you get a special player. Now, to where and what my doubts were about him, I think you kind of touched on that, Mia. I didn't play in the NFL, but I've listened to a bunch of players. My gift is my ear. My ear has always been told. They told me, I heard Jerry Jones talk about Michael Irvin running when the sprinklers were on. And like, how could you put up with that? Jerry says, look out the window. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, or Jimmy says, look out the window, and Irvin is running routes after he left the club, right? They talk about Deion and his natural ability, but what they don't talk about is his hard work, the work that he put in to be able to be who he was. So therefore, when you look at it from that perspective, I just thought, how can you be great at wide receiver? And if you guys remember the question, if Travis Hunter's at wide receiver and Travis Hunter's at corner and it's 4th down and Trevor throws the ball, who comes down with it? He said Travis Hunter, and it was great that he said that. But what I was trying to get into is, does he really think Travis Hunter, the corner, is better than Travis Hunter, the wide receiver? Because that would have told me where his heart was. But he was smart enough in fact, Gladstone thought we rehearsed it, but we didn't. But he was smart enough to answer it the way that he answered it. But what I was getting at is this. If he is out there guarding, if he's being guarded by Derek Stingley all game, then Houston gets the ball. Do you know what Nico Collins is about to do? He's going to run him on a go route. He's going to run him on a slant. When you have to face a great player on offense and a great player on defense in the same game, that playing both ways stuff don't work in the NFL like it does in Colorado, especially when you have not had the reps. Did y'all see Jalen Ramsey in the Super Bowl after he played slot all year, and then all of a sudden they want to stick him outside on T. Higgins and Jamar Chase? What happened? Big play after big play after big play, and if Joe Burrow has a half a second, Cincinnati wins the Super Bowl because Chase burned him again. You cannot take a player and just stick him out there. Deion Sanders is very rare that he could play baseball one day and return a punt for a touchdown the next. That's it. Ain't nobody else doing that. It's hard to be great in the NFL. It's really hard to be great at 2 positions when they play on both different sides of the ball. So my only problem was, and I told this to Jared Bell for USA Today, I said, maybe this is Reggie Bush. He said, what do you mean? I said, maybe it's a bunch of big plays and key moments. But what it is statistically, he's never dominated on either side of the ball to be considered an all-pro. But we just look at him and say, oh, no, that dude was the truth. Maybe that's what it is, unless he chooses one side of the ball and it looks like he's going to be a corner. Answer this question, though. Where did they need him at against Buffalo on that 8-play, 69-yard drive? They didn't need him at wide receiver in that game. They needed him to stop those 3 and 4, 5-yard passes that Josh Allen was throwing when guys were open, the ones that he can jump off of his man and pick it off and run it back the other way. They needed a closer. That's what they need, and that's what they – and by the way, maybe Travis has talked to him. Maybe they talked to him and Travis say, look, that two-way thing probably didn't work out because this is a little different than I thought it was. Y'all need me more at corner than you needed me last year wide out. I'm going to help the team. We don't know about those discussions, but to me, it's an obvious no-brainer.
I would think, at least from everything I've heard, T-Wig, he wants to play both ways, but first and foremost, he wants to help the team. And if only by the comments from the general manager a little over a month ago, right now the bigger hole is at corner.
And think about this, Mia. Think about this real quick. He wants to help the team. That is exactly who he is. By the way, he wanted to help the team when he was trying to play both ways. So what it is now is because they kept the promise to let him be more than nothing but himself, while they were all trying to figure it out, they kept the promise. There's this narrative that they've done some kind of disservice for him. I don't know how you do a disservice when you let the dude do what he wants to do. And I think that people need to let them off the hook a little bit for the fact that this didn't go the way fantasy football people wanted it to.
When we come back, that special player, Travis Hunter, could his return to the field affect some of those expiring contracts and whether or not they are back in Duval County in that defensive back room in 2026? We make the case for Buster Brown coming up next here on the Locked On Jaguar Squad Show. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. That is just 10 days away, folks. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Welcome back to the Locked On Jaguar Squad Show. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, in part on your Wednesday. Mia O'Brien, Tony T. Wigg Wiggins, Marques Ogden will rejoin us here momentarily. We appreciate you guys hanging with us after all three of us enjoyed a little bit of vacay, a little time away, but we are locked in, and the offseason is heating up in Duval County with the NFL Combine just days away. And while the Jaguars top brass perhaps will not be in attendance at the Combine in the same fashion that we've become accustomed to here in Jacksonville, because as so many have likened the Jags to, under the leadership of Liam Cohen and James Gladstone, they have become Rams East. Since 2020, the Los Angeles Rams have not brought their top ranking officials to the Combine. In the same vein, a lot of decisions, a lot of conversations will occur, whether it's in Indianapolis next week or elsewhere, Tony, Marcus. And to that end, that's not just regarding the top prospects in this April's draft. It is also regarding some of the pending free agents, which brings us to one of our favorite segments here on the Locked On Jaguar Squad Show, Make the Case. Fresh on the heels of our discussion regarding Travis Hunter and his potential impending move full-time to the defensive back room. Marcus, you tell me, after Monteric Buster Brown's breakout campaign in 2025, are you re-signing the former 7th round pick out of Arkansas?
It's going to depend. What's it going to cost and what is the market going to spare? I mean, that always comes down to cost, right? We talked about this with Devin Lloyd, like great football player. Do you want to spend $25 to $28 million a year for him? Probably not, right? Other teams, absolutely they would. So it really is going to come down to market. I don't know what the price is. I mean, Mia, what's the going rate right now for a really decent corner? I'm not going to say great corner. I'm not going to say elite corner. He's a good corner. Mm-hmm. What's the going rate look like now for like a good corner?
T-Wig, what would you say? I can pull up while you're giving your analysis. I'm going to pull up the franchise tag just to give us an idea of the median of the top 10, and then we can kind of go from there. Oh, T-Wig, I think you're muted. There you go.
If it's a non-starter at quarterback, you're talking about a rotational guy, you're talking about $3 or $4 million a year. I think it's somewhere around there on average, not considering what the guarantees are or aren't. Outside, if you're a specialist, if you're a nickel and you're not considered a starter, but you're on the field 60% of the time, I think that number goes up. They paid a little bit more for Jordan Lewis last year.
Right. And so, Marcus, I would just tell you this, like, to give you context, and I don't know if Buster Brown's in this discussion and in this category in the same vein as some of these players I'm about to rattle off, especially because they're a little bit more veteran. DJ Reed, Darius Slay secured somewhere between 11 to 13 million annually over the last few years with their various contracts. I don't know if you put them in that conversation and put Monteric in that conversation in Jacksonville, but I do think there are teams around the league who may, based off the production he had in 15 games this past year, and expecting his ceiling to be even higher.
Well, the thing is, right, that's an excellent point, Mia. Like, what's the upside, right? So you think about that, wow, 10 to 12 million per year. I mean, that's a lot. I don't think the Jaguars will pay 10 to 12 million a year for him. I don't see it. I don't know what their cap space is like. I know they've got some things to work with, but again, you said it best. There's a lot of teams out there with more money that see a greater upside, that don't have a Travis Hunter on their football team. Maybe got some older guys at corner. They need a younger player. And again, when you play in 15 games, you deserve, if they could get him from like around 4 to 6 a year, I say they're going to probably try to sign him. If he goes above that 6 range to that 8 to 10 and in that range, I don't think they're going to re-sign him. I just don't. I mean, I don't think the Jaguars want to spend that type of money on that in that area, especially with Travis Hunter coming back healthy, and they put a lot of money, and they've got some other young players there as well. Again, it's all, to me and T-Wig, it's going to be about pricing. This is a business, and you want to know what you're going to have to pay for your talent. And so if he's in that 4 to 6 range, I say probably yes. Anything in that 8 and above range where they might be valued at by other teams, I don't think the Jaguars are gonna do it.
So let's quick review those expiring contracts, the contracts that will still be on the books in that corner room headed into 2026. As of this writing, there are 2. I expect there to be 3. And then we also throw Travis Hunter in there, kind of in his own position group all entirely. Jarian Jones and Jordan Lewis are both under contract headed into the 2026 season. Lewis will be on the 2nd year of his 3-year contract that he signed last year, and Jarian will be in year 3 of his 4-year rookie contract. Both of those players do offer you, depending on if you're in base or nickel, inside-outside versatility. The Jaguars obviously paid Jordan to be the highest paid nickel corner in the league, despite the fact that Jarian had played the majority of the time in his rookie campaign in the slot. With Lewis's injury, obviously that shifted in the second half of the 2025 campaign. Christian Braswell did come in spot duty at both spots throughout the course of the 2025 season. The coaching staff, the front office, really liked the former 6th-round pick out of Rutgers. He is going to be a restricted free agent here over the next few weeks. I expect the Jaguars will tender him based off of some things I've heard coming out of the building, and in terms of their confidence in him. It's a cheap deal to bring back a player who's also a core 4 special teamer. At the same time, you've got those 3. You've got Travis Hunter. You've got an obvious hole for that 5th spot in the defensive back room. And so I also introduced this into the conversation, T-Wig, before we hear from some of our listeners. The idea of the Rams, not to say that James Gladstone will do everything verbatim what his mentor, Les Snead, how he conducted business over the last decade in Los Angeles, but the Rams have drafted 1 corner prior to day 3 in Les Snead and Sean McVay's time together at the helm of the Los Angeles Rams. And that 1 corner, David Long, back in 2019, didn't exactly pan out in the same vein as some of these other corners, like Darius Williams, the local Jacksonville product, who they got as an undrafted free agent out of UAB, or even some of the current corners that they have. Quentin Lake, I know, is a safety. He fell to the 5th round after he tested poorly. And there's a couple others, Kobe Durant, on that Rams roster that were day 3 selections. And so with that in mind, knowing the makeup of this roster, seeing this comment from our friend Hef that you could probably go 7 or 9 million for Buster Brown, but you are probably better off drafting another corner. How do you think, T-Wig, the Jaguars approach this Monteric Buster Brown situation? Yeah,
well, if they base it on what's going on with the Rams, I can unequivocally tell you this. If the Rams corners weren't so bad, they would have been in the Super Bowl. Period.
Also true. That's also very, very true.
Yeah, that's their weakness. So if they go by that, then they need to watch themselves. The other thing is, normally I say when you have 2 of your top 3 outside guys, which is Jarian, Travis, when you have two of those dudes on rookie deals, but Travis ain't got a regular rookie deal. Travis has a top 2 pick deal. So while it's not a $100 million deal as far as the cap, it still allows you a little bit of flexibility to possibly overpay at that position because you know what you have in Buster. When you think about the Jags at the end of the year, the fact that they weren't sticky enough on the back end was really the cause of them not advancing. So I don't really want them to run it back, but technically they aren't because they're getting their 2 best players in Jordan Lewis and Travis Hunter back. And those guys are sticky and play with their feet on fire and are always running and always getting their hands involved. So this won't be just running it back. I believe that they think that they can get those 2 guys back healthy and then continue to tender Braswell, bring back Monteric, even if it's a little slight overpay. And you can overpay now. The reason why you can do it, because maybe by the time he gets to year 3, you're moving on from Jordan Lewis, right? So that's another. And then Travis will be under a 5th-year option. Or close to it. So now you can start to stretch that out. It's the same thing with them being able to pay Jacoby 20, maybe get Parker at 15. You can do that because BTJ's on a rookie contract. That's how you can get away with doing that stuff. So it's about the allocation of the money in each specific room also, but you still also got to get the good people. Now, whether or not he comes back depends on what's out there, because familiarity is not a reason to re-sign a player. If you think you can absolutely upgrade it, you do it. And then to double back in the draft, that's going to be a good idea for him as well. So I don't think you can have too many corners. If somebody is sitting there, and I got a list of dudes over here, by the way, if somebody's sitting there and they have this outworldly talent and they just fall in your lap, man, you got to pull the trigger. It's unfortunate you got to make the decision about Buster Brown before the draft. And that's the part of this that you say, no, we don't want him. And then the guy, not just the position, the 2 or 3 people that you target and you miss on them, now you're stuck. So that's why it's so important for them to make a really, really good decision long and short term.
We're going to get to some of those prospects at the cornerback position who you may or may not have your eye on, T-Wig, at next week's Combine. But before we take our next time out, Marcus, this is more of a philosophical question that has kind of been like a little off-season study of mine, and I'm fascinated to get your take. And T-Wig, you can chime in as well. This notion, not just here in Jacksonville with Jarian Jones and Jordan Lewis and their ability to go inside and outside, depending on if you are in base or nickel downs. We see it with Devin Witherspoon, who is probably going to reset the corner market when the Seattle Seahawks former first-round pick does become eligible for an extension. I've heard it from a lot of people around the league. That is the next thing that every team wants to have, is a corner who can go both inside and outside, as opposed to someone who is just a lockdown outside corner or just a nickel corner, which over the last few years, those guys that once upon a time, just a nickel wouldn't get you that much money. It would probably get you a nickel. Now it's getting you a full quarter at a full 25 cents. So Marcus, why do you think that is this growing trend? And is it actually a trend that we're about to see across the league?
Oh, absolutely it is, because if you have a guy that can play outside and inside, because outside is usually more speed. They have a lot more of their number one, bigger, better receivers on the outside. Then you have on the inside, you have those guys who are bruised, who have to come in with all the zones, everybody coming across the middle. There's a lot more physicality in the middle or inside when you're playing in the secondary. Finding a guy that can do that, because I saw Witherspoon in the Super Bowl, he did well outside, he did well inside, he blitzed well, like he timed it well, he got to Drake May a couple of times. That's the type of guy that you want, that is gifted, physical, and has great outside footwork. So absolutely, it is a thing that they're going to be looking for. It's a new trend. It's not, again, like a true dominant left tackle, right? It's not going to be easy to find, or a truly gifted quarterback, but that's where the league is going to be going. Again, they're going to want to have guys that are versatile. They can go outside and go inside. Absolutely. And again, on the Monteric Buster Brown thing, also, right, T-Wig and me, it depends who is available on the open market. Who else is losing corners that are coming up on their contracts coming in? They don't get re-signed, or those guys. And as T-Wig said, you don't sign a guy for familiarity. If you can upgrade, you upgrade. So again, like you said, you can overpay the position, but do you overpay Buster? Maybe. Or do you try to find somebody else that's going to be looking to come out, overpay them? Or do you just say, you know what, we'll find a fourth, fifth corner in the draft someday on day 2 or later in the later rounds that can come into the room and learn from Travis and Jaharian and Jordan Lewis and can, and be a player, Braswell, and can then as those guys get on, they can work their way up. So there's a lot of options there. It just depends upon where the Jaguars feel it's going to be on the open market in the league, coming off other teams, and what's going to be out there in the draft coming in April.
Speaking of that all-important draft coming up, we'll hear who T-Wig thinks at that corner position you should have your eye on at next week's NFL Combine. That's coming up next here on the Locked On Jaguar Squad Show. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick your cash, but it also could send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, boys, it's one of our favorite segments, not just make the case. We have 2 favorite segments, I would argue, on this little program. And while I haven't labeled this one T-Wig's Guess the Prospect, now knowing that he's come armed to today's program with a list of corners specifically, because this is kind of a defensive back theme program today, I am very excited to hear what prospects that T-Wig has outlined for us as must watch or must perform at the NFL Combine next week. Hit it, T-Wig.
All right, here we go. And I love Witherspoon, by the way, but Gonzo from New England is going to reset the market. He's by far the youngest.
He's another level. Great guy, great player.
He's a whole nother level. But here we go. So I didn't sit here and pick somebody I think is going to go in the first 25 picks because Jaguars ain't picking there. This is if they're sitting there at 56. So I say anything maybe 40-ish where they're within range. They can go get him. That guy, if they do that, would be D'Angelo Pons because he is such a competitor, man. And he's not as big from Indiana. He's not as big as you like, but he fits right with what you're talking about. When we talk about dudes like Travis and Jordan Lewis, there's some talk about how tall he is now. Somebody that I don't really respect very much said he's over 5'10", and everybody else said he's only 5'10" if he got heels on. He's about 5'8", and he measured 5'8 and a quarter at the Senior Bowl. But one of my favorite players of all time, Darryl Green, measured at 5'8". I met him in person, and he's legit the fastest player that's ever played in the NFL, and I don't care who you want to put up against him. But anyway, I think when you compete that way, and I think he's also an inside-outside guy, and with the nickel situation, I hear you, Mia, but some nickels are safeties like Brian Branch. It's just like sometimes they're just good football players, and you don't know where to put them. Just throw them out there.
And that's something that James Gladstone and Liam Cohen have stressed since they took over this operation. Just go draft good football players.
Be nothing more than yourself, right? So that's who I like if you're thinking about that. Later, I'm going to name a name that a lot of people around here know, and that's Dalen Everett from Georgia, because Everett was a 5-star recruit, and he didn't live up to being a 5-star recruit. But because he played at Georgia, because he has that raw ability, I'm going to name 2 people. Tyson Campbell, that's why he got picked, because of that raw high school 5-star pedigree. And he hadn't quite made it and hadn't quite lived up to that. But there are players, though, that kind of underachieve in college, but if you tap into the raw athlete that they were that made him a 5-star recruit, then you may be able to get something out of him. Damani Jackson at Alabama was the same type player. Maybe sometimes you can get those dudes and they end up better than they were in college. A lot of people thought Kamari Lassiter from Georgia was just the dude that hurt Marvin Harrison Jr. and caused Ohio State to lose the game.
And that he was just an inside guy.
Right. Guess what? Everybody talks about Stingley, and they need to. That other dude on the other side in Houston can flat out play. So find you a dog, man. I don't care if he runs a 4.55 or a 4.58. watch the tape. And if they scrap, and if they come to work, and if they have a navigation system in their head because they're a football playing Jesse that eats, sleeps, and drinks football, that's the dude you want to pick in that secondary. So those are the two guys. I'm really looking more at safety. I don't consider Keontae Scott a corner. I think he's a nickel in that same Brian Branch frame of mind, but I also think he can play strong safety too, like where Dewey is. So that's why he's on my list of people to watch also.
Hang on some of those other names for the combine next week, T-Wig. We'll pivot to some of those here momentarily. But Marcus, I want to go back to a conversation you and I had a few weeks ago. Because you drafted Travis Hunter number 2 overall, and while I 1000% co-signed what T-Wig just said about finding a scrappy dude who loves to play football, to play outside corner for you, opposite Travis Hunter, if Jarian Jones or Jordan Lewis are inside, or if you're in a dime package, or if you just want that fourth guy who's eventually going to ascend to a starting role. Because you took Travis number 2 overall, can you take D'Angelo Ponds at number 56? Or do you feel you could still find that player on day 3 of the draft?
So again, that's a great question, Mia. When you're talking about certain positions, again, corner being one of them, if you find that a guy is really that good or has that type of capability, you need to draft him because you can try and find other players that could potentially plug and play in the later rounds. Guard, center, wide receiver, running back, tight end. Like those are the positions where the guys that you can get in the later rounds can still be a high quality player. And it's not that much of a fall off when you talk about in the college ranking and the draft. When you go from like tackles, and first round tackles, and like a seventh round tackle, not the same caliber. But you can get guys, certain positions early and late have some sort of close similarities and capabilities. So if you can find a really great sticky, as T-Wig says, dog corner in that round, at that pick in the second round, and it's available, and you need him, and you need to bring in that other player to help bring it ascend, I'm going to take that player at that position. To answer your question, yes, you can definitely do that if you know that player is somebody that fits your system. Well, especially you go to the combine, you get a chance to talk to them, get to know them off the field. If you know they're going to be a great player, fits your room, like your DB room, fit your culture, that's a play you have to take at that position.
One thing I will add to that, Marcus, you're exactly right. Mia, that is an absolute great question, by the way. The way that I look at it is this. Let me equate this to basketball. No, I'll use the Jacksonville Jaguars current roster. Dennis Gardeck can play. You're not drafting Dennis Gardeck or picking Dennis Gardeck to play 65 snaps. You're just not. You got 20 snaps where you're targeting him for a specific thing. Guys that are in the draft, the difference is they got warts. See, dudes that I believe you pick in the first round and some in the second round, I don't care what your scheme is, play them. If your scheme don't fit, change it. Guys in the third, fourth, and fifth round, they just have more things that they can't do. So Bill Belichick used to always say he would ask players to do when they're on the field, we're going to ask you to do what you do absolute best. We ain't going to even, like in the basketball analogy, if you got a dude that can flat out shoot, but he can't guard anybody, a team that plays man-to-man defense is just going to use him as a spot-up shooter and a dude you got to run screens for, and you bring him in late in games when you need a 3. If there's a team that plays a zone, they ain't never playing man-to-man, and he can shoot like that, he might be a top 10 pick to them because they're going to use him a certain way. That's just what the draft is. The draft is there are guys in the 7th and 8th round that can play. LaQuint Allen. You know why he didn't go earlier? Because the one thing that people look for is a featured back. That's not what he is. They use him exactly for what they know he can do, his superpower. So that's what it is. When you go down in a draft, it doesn't mean that they're guys that they can't play. It's just guys that may need work in certain areas, and the likelihood that they're going to be successful is lower than the other guys because there's something in their game that doesn't translate universally.
Hef also would like to add that Ponds locked down Denzel Boston of Washington with ease. He is a boundary guy, very similar to former Jaguar and Jacksonville native Darius Williams.
And if you draft him in the second round, you're drafting him to be an outside corner. And opposite Travis Hunter. Yeah.
And then the question becomes, Jordan Lewis, Jarian Jones, what are you doing with those two players? Are you running a lot of dimes if they're both on the field because you want to get both on the field? Or is Jordan Lewis your starter, Jarian Jones is your backup? Obviously, Lewis is coming off of the Lisfranc injury.
And Lewis can play, Jarian can play all three positions.
Correct. He could be a swing guy. Yeah,
so that's your swing guy right there. Jordan Lewis is a starter. If you have Pons, Jordan Lewis, first of all, if you got Pons, Jordan Lewis, and Travis Hunter, oh, you sticky. You're a lot more sticky, especially with the new coach. You're a lot more sticky than you have been. And then somebody needs a blow, or Travis is going to play some offense, or you go in a dime, or somebody tweaks something and gets hit in the head and has to come out for a minute. The worst you can do is put in Jarian Jones. That creates competition, which creates liftoff for the franchise. That's just the way it has to be.
You can
what other? Go ahead, Marcus.
You can never have enough good or great corners. Never. Because, again, that's a position where there's a lot of wear and tear on your body. And it's like you have to backpedal, cuts, twists, all this, tackling somebody, coming downhill fast. Guys get tweaked, banged up, bruised at that position constantly, like everybody else on the football field, but especially that one. There's a lot of wear and tear, especially on their knees, their hips, and their ankles. So getting guys you have that can be in the rotation and keep guys fresh and keep guys from reducing the possibility of injury, you can never have enough great players at that position. That's just a key position, especially if you're going to put those guys on the field constantly and rotate them around, different packages. They're going to be doing a lot. Sometimes you might run 30, 40 yards, every other play. You need to have versatility. You need to have people you can switch in and out of those positions.
All right, T-Wig, who else do we have our eye on next week at the Combine, regardless of position?
Regardless of position, I love some offensive linemen, man. I actually sent my man Marcus a message. I really have to keep this in context of where the Jaguars are picking. So I kind of think Jennings Dunker, I'm sorry, Mia. Jennings Dunker from Iowa won't be there when they start really investing in their line. But they seem to really take a lot of pride in versatility and people that can run and move their feet. So guys that play multiple positions, Brian Parker, the third from Duke, they project him to be a center, but he's played tackle. If you can play tackle and center, you can probably play guard. Another one is Cage Casey from Boise. Now, I know they made a commitment in Cole Van Lannon, and they still have Anton Harrison. Cage Casey can play, man. I've seen him outside playing, and I'm thinking he could probably play inside too. They got a lot of nasty in them, and they move their feet. And then if you're talking about a little bit later than that, I would look at probably Austin Barber, another Jacksonville native who played at Florida. They love guys that try stuff. The kid lined up at left tackle, but at the Senior Bowl, they put him in at left guard, and he didn't blink. So when you see stuff like that, they actually took a kid from Auburn last year, McLeod, because he was asked to do something at the Senior Bowl, didn't even play well, but they liked the fact that he tried. So when you think about it like that, I still want to see more investment in the offensive line. And where the Jaguars have some picks, I think a bunch of these people, maybe at least 2 or 3 of them will be in that neighborhood, and they're guys that move their feet and really, really know how to block out in space.
We appreciate everybody submitting some of the names they'll have their eyes on at the Combine. We're going to hit some of those. We've saved the last 10 plus minutes for live Q&A. Don't go anywhere. This last break is the shortest break we've ever had in the history of the Locked On Jaguar Squad show. We'll be right back after this. I told you it was going to be a quick, fast break. Nice.
Look at that.
Mia O'Brien, Tony, T-Wig, Wiggins, Marques Ogden. We're with you for another segment, just one more on this fine Wednesday. The next time we speak to you next Monday, yours truly will be at the NFL Combine, and we'll be diving even further inside of what I'm hearing, boots on the ground in Indianapolis, as well as some of those prospects that we are going to continue to discuss here on this final segment on the Locked On Jaguar Squad show. In case you joined us a little bit late, our opening topic was Travis Hunter and the discourse that continues to percolate around the internet, because everyone has to have an opinion when it comes to the former number 2 overall pick. Let's get to some of your questions, to some of your comments, which you can keep those coming here live on the Locked On Jaguars YouTube channel. First, from the Wavy Dude, he says, I have been saying all year, Travis would be better at DB and playing part-time wide receiver, he would elevate way better. A couple more from our friend, the Wavy Dude. If Travis Hunter would be a top 10 DB if he stays healthy. And T-Wig, that is I don't want to say a disclaimer because the Wavy Dude is one of our everydayers here on the Locked On Jaguars YouTube channel, but this notion, and Marcus hit on it as well, that number one, corner is a position, wide receiver as well, that is prone to soft tissue injuries. But number two, the wear and tear of Travis Hunter playing both ways, and that inevitably was going to lead to multiple injuries. As Marcus said, it was a freak accident what occurred to him on Halloween in Jacksonville at a regular Thursday afternoon practice. Are you concerned about that wear and tear on number 12 moving forward?
No, because he doesn't get tired. They say the dude is like Batman or something. And the only other person I've ever heard folks say that about, well, two, Michael Jordan and Floyd Mayweather, is just that like they never sleep. They're always going. So that means he's superior in that way. I think people might try to wear him out because he has a little bit of a narrow frame, but they're going to do that whether he plays 30 snaps or whether they play 60 snaps. And he proved that he'll stick his nose in there. You know, some of the most physical players we've ever seen were thin guys that'll come up and just and pop you. So no, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Like you said, it was a freak accident with what happened to him, and I don't think we need to take that injury for anything more than it just being something that just happened.
Long John Silver, one of our everydayers, says, I mean, Travis did something amazing almost every time he caught the ball last season, though. Who would have thought? Again, just draft good football players. From Scribbles 643, you have to get the ball in Travis Hunter's hands. There are few players more dynamic with the ball. Needs to be used on offense as well. We really didn't hit the offensive part of it all, Marcus, but certainly with Parker Washington's emergence in the second half of the 2025 season, Jacoby Myers landing a 3-year extension from the Big Cats. How much realistically do you think on offense Travis Hunter will be called upon without injuries coming into play in 2026?
I don't think a lot. I mean, I think, like you said, you've got, BTJ, you've got, Jacoby Myers with the extension. You've got Parker Washington, who's shown you that he could be a big play receiver, down the stretch. You have Curtis, you've got Brenton Strange. I mean, you have some weapons at the wide receiver position. And again, I think they're probably going to draft the guy in the way late rounds. So I think they'll bring another person into the room, a young guy, to help bring in some longevity and some youth to the room. And I just don't know where you need to put him at. Now, again, special plays, all that. And I think if I'm the Jaguars, I put him in an office. I use him as a decoy to have to think I'm going to him and not go to him. Like, don't bring him on the field and always have like end arounds, reverses. Don't do that because that's going to be, everybody's going to see that coming. Bring him on the field as a decoy, have the defense, hone in on him, and he's just a decoy, and you go the other way, misdirection, all that kind of great stuff. So I just don't feel they're going to need to have him on the field on offense as much. I think, again, there's the primary need at defense. Again, T-Wig said it very beautifully. The Buffalo Bill game, we needed a corner to stop those short routes, those quick hitches, those slants, those quick ends. We didn't have a lot of that being covered well and aggressively because, again, to be in man-on-man or even be playing up on somebody aggressively, you don't have a lot of backside help. That's dangerous because if you get beat, you're going to get beat for long and the touchdown in the game. But Travis has that demeanor, that athletic ability where he's going to challenge players and he's going to rely on his instincts and his natural athletic ability. He gets beat to catch up, just like Gonzalez did in the Super Bowl when he broke up that pass from Rashid Rice. That's exactly the type of player Travis Hunter is.
T-Wig's eyes lit up when you referenced a late round wide receiver pick, Marcus. So we're going to stick a pin in that. We will get back to that, T-Wig, because I see your eyes still lighting up. I know you've got some names. Our friend Hef has some names at corner and offensive line we're going to run through. But one more quick on Travis Hunter, because I don't know where this hot take came from. 321 says, Hunter is a man corner. He is slow to react in zone. He needs to work on that. I will just tell you 321. If anything, I heard from people inside the Jaguars building when there was a chance they were going to naturally be picking number 1 or number 2 overall in the waning weeks of the 2024 season before they pulled out a victory over the Titans and in turn ended up falling into the number 5 slot and then ultimately traded up to number 2. I had people telling me then, if the new Jaguars defensive coordinator, because everybody and their mother knew Ryan Nielsen was out, except for Ryan Nielsen, perhaps. Sorry to Rick Nielsen. But with that said, if the Jaguars moved away from that predominant man defense they deployed in 2024 and went to more of a zone, Travis Hunter would be a natural fit. They obviously bring in Anthony Campanile. That's a defense that ran a lot of zone, T-Wig. So I just want you to continue to refute the point. Sorry to the listener. Sorry to the everydayer. But yeah, no. Travis Hunter, if anything, you could question his limitations in man.
And you could question the limitations of what he believed they were telling him to do. There were times when he was on defense, he turned around with his hands out like, look, you can't just do things on your own. If you're supposed to be lined up 5 yards off, if you ain't lined up 5 yards off, you throw the whole thing. If it's a zone, you throw the whole thing away. Everybody, because the other corner or the safety right there in the slot or the one near the hash is looking at you like, hey, you have to be in a certain spot. That's what it is. And sometimes you could question why they were in certain defenses. If it's 3rd and 5, why are we 5-6 yards off? You could question that. But Travis Hunter, I had a former NFL coach, defensive back coach by trade, standing right there and say the dude that might be the most instinctive football player he's ever seen. So I don't know where that he's late from. That's when sometimes when you look at tape, you think he's late, but he's actually handcuffed because he's playing something he probably doesn't want to be doing. It might be why they got a new DB coach in there, and they said that the offense the defense will continue to evolve. Maybe they played that way at some point because they didn't trust everyone, okay? And sometimes you have to do that. But when you play zone, it ain't about you. It's about us, me being where I'm supposed to be, at least on defense, because if not, it ain't even my man I got to worry about. It's the man of the other person that's going to go up and stack a dude and go right to where I'm supposed to be and make a catch. So sometimes you got to watch it and know what it really, really is. It's not the person's fault you think it is.
We did promise that we would circle back to the hire of Mathai Arujo. I'm going to mispronounce that till the cows come home. The new secondary coach who was hired from the Miami Dolphins and also spent some time at Yale and a couple other stops in the college ranks, was with Anthony Campanile in South Florida. He was hired to replace Ron Miles a few weeks ago. And certainly, yes, to your point, T-Wig, there were questions of guys are looking at the sideline. It's not just Travis Hunter who's looking at the sideline, both at wide receiver and corner. And now we'll see if a new DB coach, a new secondary coach, changes that perspective and the knowledge and what have you of how this room looks. But again, it may be a different looking room as well if Buster Brown, Greg Newsome, and others do depart. We got a couple more I want to get to. First and foremost, some names. Since we're on the corner subject, we talked about D'Angelo Pons. Hef also brings up one of his Cal DBU guys, Hezekiah Massis, TJ Hall out of Iowa, and Devin Moore, who I saw some love on the streets on the internet today for the former Florida corner because he is 6'2", and it's a draft class that does not have a ton of taller corners. Marcus, you tell me, if he's a 6'2" corner, does that elevate the draft stock?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because you can play man-to-man against those bigger, taller wide receivers. So, Nico Collins from Houston, 6'5". You can do that. So, yes, having taller corners that are athletic and physical are always a upgrade in the draft, for sure. Like a tackle having longer arms.
So, Dalen, I didn't want to mention both Gators and just go with a bunch of local guys. Dalen Everett, 6'1", 190. They both, him and Devin Moore, ranked sort of the same and had the sort of fanfare when they came out, but also kind of had the similar careers also where you ain't talking about them in the top half of the first round. But that's a good call. I like Devin Moore as well.
We also have more of Marcus's area of expertise on the offensive line. Some names that Hef has provided us, in addition to Brian Parker out of Duke, that could be of interest with some of those later day 2 picks. The Jaguars, of course, with 3 third-round picks. I know Hef is on the Logan Jones train, the center out of Iowa. I've also seen some love in the streets and in the comments for the center of the Florida Gators and Jake Slaughter. I don't see Marcus, the Jaguars going center because they did pay Robert Hainsey. He's in his late 20s, but then some other names that Hef brings into question, Bo Stevens, JC Davis, Drew Shelton, some guys who could step in and play guard for you, if not in 2026, maybe at some point down the line.
Yeah, I mean, you're always looking at guys, again, kind of reminds me of Marshall Yonda, who was a tackle in college. He ended up being a guard for the Baltimore Ravens and moving out to tackle when one of their players retired. He's a Hall of Fame player, in my opinion. Great guy out of Iowa. Iowa with Kirk Ferentz, who been a coach of Iowa. That was Jonathan's rookie O-line coach with the Baltimore Ravens. So Kirk Ferentz has always been a O-line, just specimen. So
And tight end, both.
Yep. Guys coming out of Iowa know the game. They know how to play offensive line, and that's why they come into the league and do so well. So, again, the guy from Iowa is the center. You could easily go to guard and learn to move without the ball. It's actually easier to go to guard and learn how to move without the football. So, guys that do that can really I like any guy from Iowa that's got a high, a possibility. I just like them more because I know Kirk Ferentz is going to have them boys coached up.
T-Wig, let's end with you with that twinkle in your eye with regards to wide receiver. Let's run through some names that both Devert and Hef have submitted to the chat. Devert has joined the church of Chase Roberts, the BYU wide receiver, who I believe could be a nice little match if the Jaguars were to not re-sign Tim Patrick. We'll make the case for him in the coming weeks since he is a pending free agent. Hef would also note Reggie Virgil, Caleb Douglas, and Colby Young as better fits than Chase Roberts. Oh, here's the list. Oh, he's got the list.
Hell, there you go, baby.
Yep, I see.
Reggie Virgil. That's my late round dude. Now, if you watch him run, he looks like Jameson Williams. I'm telling you, that kid is fast. Reggie Virgil is the type of dude that the Green Bay Packers draft, and you won't see him until the middle of next year, and he turns out to be Romeo Doubs or somebody. That's the kind of player he is. I'm telling you, man, when in doubt, draft somebody fast that can take the top off the defense. Even if he ain't running the whole route tree, just draft a fast person who catches with his hands and high points the ball, and Reggie Virgil does all of that stuff.
So Reggie Virgil's the top of the list. Give us another sampling of some wide receiver names you'll have your eye on at the Combine next week, T-Wig.
Zachariah Branch, to see what he weighs, how big he is. And the reason why I say that, because Parker Washington is your primary punt returner. You go out and give Parker Washington $15, $17 million or whatever, you want to take him off with a special team.
Okay, off the punt.
That's right. So now you need somebody else to go do that and earn their keep. And Zachariah is a dude that can be a gadget player on offense. He's fast, once again. He has a special superpower, and he's also a magnificent punt returner. Those are the two dudes for the reasons and where the Jaguars are picking that I'm focused on. I'm more focused on where the Jaguars have picks than I am on the overall draft, but I have to do the overall draft too to get to those guys. So I see a bunch of these dudes bunched up between the middle of the second and probably the fourth round. Now, if they were looking for a wide receiver 3, if they were looking for this draft's Jacoby Myers, I'd say take Jeremy Bernard from Alabama because I think he is going to be an absolute monster. Yep. They're not going to be looking for a guy like that where he's going to go. He's going in the second round, in my opinion. But he's going to be another dude, man. He's going to be one of those dudes who's going to turn into somebody's wide receiver 2 that gets 900 yards a year and maybe has a couple of seasons where he's over 1,000. He's a hands catcher. He runs crossing routes. He runs the entire route tree, and he does it with the ball in his hands. He turns into a punt returner. So those are the dudes I really, really like for where the Jaguars are going to be selecting.
And I love the shout to the return position. So long as Parker Washington is in Jacksonville for the long term, certainly you want to get him off of the return team, off of special teams, if he's going to be a featured wide receiver for you. That might be one of the biggest positions of need that we are not talking about with regards to the Jacksonville Jaguars headed into 2026. Could it be addressed in the NFL draft? Well, that's why you have us 2 days a week here on the Locked On Jaguars YouTube channel. So we can debate that and more with you live here on YouTube. And of course, you can get the show on demand wherever you get your podcasts. Any other closing thoughts, boys, before the Combine kicks off in earnest next Monday?
Marcus, tell me about did you get a chance? I know you worked out, but what was that whole process like, man? Because I hear that even at the 30 people invite, that they watch body language, they watch how you move.
It's everything. They watch everything you do from the time you hit the field to the time you're off. So everybody's going to be studied, looked at, monitored, looked at every which way. Every microscope's on you, and they want to know how you handle adversity. You have a bad rep, How do you handle that? Do you get your head down? Do you have the right energy? Are you bounced back? You have the right mindset? Are you resilient? Do you handle rejection well? This is a mental. It's way more mental than it is physical all day long. Always, always has been that way, and it will be that way forever.
It'll be exciting to see who puts on a show both on the field and off next week in Indianapolis as the offseason rolls on, and we've got you covered boots on the ground and across all the various angles here on the Locked On Jaguar Squad Show. T-Wig, what's coming up the rest of this week on the YouTube channel?
Breaking it down twice a day, a 30-minute show like we always do, and our new bonus show that will come on in the afternoon. Matter of fact, I think it's over there somewhere right now running. But yeah, bonus show. It is all about the offseason, the draft, the mindset that the Jaguars may or may not have. So we're going to hit some real hard opinions. Since we got so many chances to give it, we're going to give it to you straight. We ain't going to mix it up, man. We're going to tell you exactly how we feel about it.
We will keep our eyes peeled for those takes. And of course, we will be back with you on Monday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another edition of the Locked On Jaguar Squad Show. Until Monday, we will catch you later.